Hey, good day, everyone. Angie Fairbanks here. It's great to be back in my chair from traveling around South Africa. So it's great to be back, and I'm really excited to have Dr. Alessandra as well as Jennifer on the line today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to the founder of 24/7 Assessments, to Dr. Tony Alessandra.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Angie. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our August webinar. And as Angie mentioned, I'm Dr. Tony Alessandra, founder of Assessments 24/7. First, I want to thank Angie and the entire Action Coach corporate team for orchestrating and sponsoring these monthly webinars. Action Coach and Assessments 24/7 have become close colleagues in the relatively short time since we formed our partnership, which actually exists to equip every Action Coach with one of our online white label assessment accounts. So what I want to show you before we get into the actual program itself today is the login screen here. And when you log into your, your white label assessment account, this is what you will see. All right, so this is the login page. Here are some links up here where you can go to different areas, resources, etc. So this is the entire. So for those of you already actively using our Assessments 24/7 accounts, you've probably seen firsthand how robust and easy it is to use your account. In addition to being the place where you can purchase and distribute assessments, so you can purchase here. This tells you how many you have left. This is my account. That's why I have so many here. And when you want to add credits, you just put your mouse over here and you can buy credits. It's also the central hub for everything you need that's assessments related. So your accounts enable you to run free group reports. If you come up here, you can see there's group reporting over here. You can download free marketing one sheets, which is right here. You can download free trainer materials. So here's DISC trainer materials. Here's motivators training materials. I believe we even added emotional intelligence trainer materials. They all have passwords. And we are adding sometime today the learning style training materials. So these are great for your coaching workshops. All right, so you can also watch all your past webinars. Let's see, where are they? Right here, past webinars. You click on this, and all of our past webinars you can access from here. So if at any time you'd like a personal tour of your account, our team is available to provide a screen-to-screen training session. Now, we've also included and recorded video tutorials, which you can access. Let's see, you access the video tutorials right here, a virtual tour of your account. Those are video tutorials. If there's a particular aspect here that you're not sure what to do or how it works, you can come here, the virtual tour, or you can click here for detailed instructions, written instructions. Now, at the end of this webinar, we're going to give away 5 free assessments. So before we go any further, I want to let everybody know that we're going to give away 5 free learning styles assessments to one lucky webinar attendee. Last month, Dave Schoenbeck won 5 free motivators assessments. So keep in mind, you'll only be able to win them at the end of the webinar, so we'd encourage everyone to stay to the end of today's presentation. Now, here's the account login page. I think all of you are familiar with this page. You should be. This is where you log in. This is where you access your actual account. So when you log in here, this is what you see right here. So let's go back here. What I want to show you here is the announcements. So these announcements were updated on August 2nd. We're always updating, and you'll see little announcements and notices that you should be aware of. This is a great place to keep abreast of our latest updates and announcements. And our CMO, Matt Dixon, he updates this page once or twice each and every month. All right, so here, the new Motivators training material folder. We have our users conference. It's just actually, let's see, August, September, October, less than 2 months away now. And I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end. We totally redesigned the emotional intelligence report, so you can look at it here and get account access here if you don't have it, etc. So this is really great. Now, what I want to do is get into the meat of the program right now, and I want to introduce Jennifer Voigtland. And Jennifer is our Director of Instructional Design and Certification. So anybody who's been through our DISC certification or our Motivator certification, I guess those are the two big ones we're doing right now, but we'll have all 5 of our core assessments where you can go through certification. But she does all of our certifications. And I'm going to ask Jennifer to actually come online and walk us through the Learning Styles report. So Angie, if you can turn the screen over to Jennifer, and when you're done, you can pass it back to me.
I just transferred it over, and as soon as Jennifer does it, I will like to say Andrew Cousins is on the line, and he said he ran a DISC debrief 3-hour session today and worked really well, so thank you for that.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay. Great work, Andrew.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. So I need someone to confirm for me what screen you can see of mine. I have 3. Do you see Learning Styles, or do you see my family?
No, I see Learning Styles.
Wonderful. All right. So this is the cover of the Learning Styles assessment. If you've done a webinar with me before, you know probably that I use our sample assessment for these calls. And our sample assessments are located on the Assessments 24/7 website so that you can access them and match notes that you take along with what I speak about. So this is directly from the sample report that's on that website, and that's the one we're going to look at today. Now, the difference between what we're going to do with the report today and what I've done in the past with other reports on these webinars is I'm not actually going to debrief this one the way that I had for DISC and Motivators. Instead, I'm just going to walk you through and give you an overview of what it looks like. So we'll start at the very beginning here with Learning Styles and an introduction. The introduction to learning styles is essential when you're talking about how learning styles works for different organizations or individuals. And the reason for that is because learning styles is not something that everyone agrees on. Learning styles can be all different kinds of experiences. Some people think of it as part of perception and memory. Some people think it's part of thought and understanding. Some people see it as a unique process for collecting information. What we know is there are lots of different definitions, countless books and articles from hundreds of different perspectives about what learning styles are. Now, most often when we think of learning styles, we hear them described only as a visual learning style, an auditory learning style, or a kinesthetic learning style. But there's so much more than just those 3 elements that can go into our effectiveness in the way that we learn and process information, and also retrieve it and apply it into our world. So this assessment brings in that visual, auditory, and kinesthetic approach, but also provides a great deal more than just those 3 areas. And we'll see that as we go through the report. The other thing that's important to note about learning styles is that not all learners are equal. They come in a variety of shapes. They come in a variety of sizes from many cultural backgrounds and from all different experiences. And so the ways we learn and process learning can be quite different. Now, as we spoke about before, some people prefer visual learning, some people prefer auditory learning, some people prefer kinesthetic learning, and yet there's all other elements that go into the way that we process information, whether we like to learn one-on-one, whether we prefer to learn in groups, whether we intuitively understand things quickly, or if we prefer to look at paths of sequential information, or whether we need time to reflect and apply the information that we receive. The only thing that we know for sure about learning styles is that every individual learns in their own particular way and has preferences for the way they take in information and process it. This questionnaire is designed, and this report is designed to help individuals understand their relative preference to better manage their own learning process. So it's going to reveal some general preferences for our learning and also show us our natural learning biases, or the things that we lean toward more when we're taking in information. While this is far from an exact science, the more that we can understand about how we perceive new information, the better and more successful we can be with transferring learning and making it meaningful for our world. So as we dive into the report, the second page is the table of contents, which explains what's going to be in here, and we're going to go through this together at this time. Introduction here about what it is that we're looking for. And the very first meaty part of this, if you will, is this visual. I know it's kind of tiny, so I would recommend that you check it out on the sample report or take the report yourself and see how it works for you. But this brain in the center of this page gives us some insight into how we function, how our brains work, how we process information. To be as effective as possible, we have to use our whole brain. But inherently, we use different parts of our brain to learn different things, and different parts of our brain are activated more readily than other parts. So this graphic gives us some insight to how the different sections of our brain work. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so that you can see some of this language. So you can see that on the left hemisphere of the brain, you're looking at a more verbal processing. On the right side, you're looking more nonverbal processing. You can also see in this area around the center here that each of these sections looks at different elements: analytical, intuitive, kinesthetic, detailed. And then on the outside of each of these areas, it gives descriptors about the person that thinks with this most primary part of their brain. So this kind of person has these characteristics, they learn in this way, and typically are interested in these kinds of things. So again, as you look through this whole page, you can determine which part of my brain am I most likely to be using. Now, that's not to say that there aren't lots of different ways we use our brain or lots of different things that we bring into our experience, but it gives us an idea of where we naturally lie and where we might want to explore growing our brain in another direction. So this visual comes right out of the gate. The next page of the assessment shows us our scores for the learning styles report. Now again, as I said before, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic is part of this, but it's not the only thing. So we're going to be looking at all of these different pieces together. There are 4 steps that are part of what we call a learning cycle. We'll talk about the cycle as we get to the end of this, but I want to point out that these are the 4 steps: attending, translating, relating, and understanding. And within each of these 4 steps, we have preference. We'll talk about each of these individual preferences in a moment, but they are telescopic and wide angle when it comes to attending. Translating is broken into dependent, collaborative, or autonomous. Relating is visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And understanding is global and analytical. And based on how we go through this process of learning and our preferences in each of these areas, we can have greater success with learning something and applying something in our world, or we can have a harder time. When you're looking at the results page, what you'll notice is these colored boxes. The color box indicates this person's score in this area. You'll also see scoring over here on the far right. The gray bar just below each of these scoring areas is the norm score. So for everyone who's completed this assessment in the past, this is the normal score or the average score of all of the folks that have taken it in these areas. You can see that this person is above average in comparison to norm in telescopic and below average in wide angles. And again, we'll talk about what those mean in just a few minutes. Likewise, translating, this person is higher than average in dependent, lower than average in collaborative, and just above average in autonomous. And their highest area of preference is dependent translation. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, the same thing, higher than average in visual, and that's their primary preference. Auditory is right at norm. Kinesthetic is right at norm, again, lower than their visual preference in relating. And then they have a higher than average global understanding and an at average analytical understanding, but they prefer global when it comes to learning. Now, this information and this scoring is really important to remember as you move through the rest of the process of this assessment. This is the only place the scores are given. So you'll see at the top of each of the pages that follow, it asks you to refer to these scores as opposed to having it on each page. This is something that you'll want to pay attention to when you're working with someone with this report, so that they remember where did their preference lie. And you can always refer back to it as you go. All right, so the next several pages that we'll see break these down into individual pieces. Page 6 gives us an understanding of what these 4 areas are. So you've got definitions here, and it describes what telescopic and wide angle is for attending. It describes what dependent, collaborative, and autonomous are for translating. Again, relating, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and then for understanding, global and analytical. So this gives you a perspective of what is it that we're looking at here in terms of the definition. Page 7 talks about what to do when it comes to your scoring. How do you interpret them? What do they mean? What is it that we're exploring here in these elements? And there's some suggestions here at the top of the page that you should keep in mind as you review your scoring. Things like that the learning style that you draw upon at the moment is what's represented here. That doesn't mean that sometimes you don't look at learning differently, but when you took this assessment, that's what's represented here. So it gives you some helpful hints to remember as you go through. Page 8 begins the exploration of each of the 4 steps of the cycle. So again, as I mentioned, it'll say reference your scores from the graphs on page 5 at the top of each of these pages. And then you'll have information about not only what does this characteristic step look like, but also what are the descriptors for each side of this. So if you're a telescopic learner, these are the things that would be most applicable to you. If you're a wide-angled learner, these are the things that are most applicable to you. Now, I've had someone ask me recently, why is it that you just don't tell me what I am and leave the rest of it off? Well, part of that comes back to recognizing that other styles are different than ours. So when you're working with others who are not like you, it's important to know the things that work for them or the things that don't work for them as well, so that you can find a way to have a meaningful learning environment for more than just yourself. So we give you the examples of both sides so you know how that works and how to recognize what styles are different from yours. The following page 9 looks at the second step, translating, and again, you have descriptors and characteristics for each of the 3 different elements of the translating step. You've got percentages of how many people fall into each of these categories, the likes, the dislikes for each of them, so that you can, again, recognize what works for you and also what works for others. Page 10 of this assessment looks at step 3, the relating step, and it looks at your the same information here. You've got your definition at the top, the 3 areas, the percentages of people that fall into those areas, etc. Page 11, this is for the 4 steps for understanding that global versus analytical perspective. And again, you've got your descriptions and your characteristics of each of these areas. Now, before we go on to the next part of this, I'd like to stop here for just a moment and actually talk to you about each of these styles so that you understand what it is that we're looking at for each of these steps. For the purposes of this, I'm going to start with the attending. This is step 1 of the learning cycle. So when we're looking at telescopic and wide-angle learning, what are we looking at here? Attending, this step looks at an individual's motivation to learn, their level of commitment, and their ability to concentrate when new information is presented. So there are these 2 subscales, telescopic and wide-angle. Telescopic means that they are generally effective at concentrating without worrying about physical context or outside distractions. So they're able to be committed and typically able to concentrate and be focused on the learning without the consideration of what's going on around them. Wide-angle, just like it sounds, means that they are easily affected by their environment. They can be affected by things like noise, light, physical influences in the classroom. There's a lot of distraction that can happen if you're a more wide-angled learner. So when we're talking with someone about which preference they have, it's important to note the effectiveness of their learning style and pay attention to the things that could cause their learning to be less effective based on which of these they prefer to learn through. All right, let's look at step 2. This is translating. This is also known as knowledge encryption, so how we bring information into our brain. Translating looks at who an individual relies on to manage that transfer of learning. So dependent learners means that they need someone else, whether a trainer, a facilitator, a coach, to help them understand the information. Collaborative learners prefer to learn in a group discussion or a team activity. Autonomous learners prefer self-reliance, so they will likely manage their own learning transfer process very personally. They don't need to have someone else involved in it. And this transfer of learning piece covers how we make sense of what we see, hear, and sense. It's how we make information meaningful for us. So either someone can give it to us, we do it in a group, or we can take care of it on our own. The next one, relating. This is the one that's probably most familiar for most of you if you're used to visual, kinesthetic, and auditory learning, absolutely a part of this cycle. And even though this is something that you've seen before, there's a likelihood that as you explore this information, the second or third time through, you might learn something new. Kind of like watching a movie that you've seen before. Every time you watch it, you get to see something different. The same thing here with visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. There's all different angles that we can look at. So when it comes to step 3, this relating step, this looks at how an individual's perception of data or information is related to or linked to existing knowledge. So how we take in new information and apply it to what we already know. And again, it's measured in visual, kinesthetic, auditory. Visual is information that can be seen, auditory information that can be heard, kinesthetic information that can be experienced through touch, smell, or taste. The last step that we've got here is understanding. When it comes to understanding, understanding looks at the individual's preference for synthesizing the data and receiving that information and then applying it. So there are 2 ways that this happens, either globally or analytically. Global is a preference for understanding the big picture. Analytical is understanding a more detailed level step-by-step approach. So when looking at all 4 of these different areas, you can see how much thought, attention, and experience can go into a learning process beyond just VAK. While VAK is a part of it and very important, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, there are all these other areas of how do we gather the information, what do we pay attention to, how do we translate that information based on how it's given to us or how we prefer to receive it, how do we experience and relate that information to our other experiences and our past knowledge, and then how do we create a preference for it and use that information to make our experiences more worthwhile and meaningful. So it's more than just what typically people would think of as a learning style. Now, after we've provided information on each of these different steps and looked at our style preferences, the next several pages of the report show it as a cycle. So you'll see the effective learning cycle in 4 steps, and it gives a little more color, if you will, around each of these areas. So again, that first step is attention or attending, and it shows here the different areas of thinking that come into this particular step. So for attention focus, it takes into consideration the style and context of the learning. It takes into consideration the motivation of learning, what's in it for me when it comes to learning this information, and finally, removing distractions. And all of those things play together to make our attention focus. This is step 1. Step 2 of that translating step is all about knowledge encryption. And what happens here is we take our existing mental model, which vocabulary, and we translate. And sometimes we need to unlearn something that we've learned previously to be able to create new learning. So for example, if as a small child you encountered a dog that barked, and every dog you met after that time barked, and they were all little dogs, you may assume from your understanding and your experience that all little dogs bark. However, as you get older, perhaps you encounter a dog who's also little and yet doesn't bark. That would change the way that you think about things. You would have to unlearn that perception that all small dogs bark when you encounter a small dog who doesn't. So unlearning that process would allow you to encrypt new knowledge in your brain, and that's part of the translating step. Now, there's some more information about learning and unlearning at the end of the report that gives you how to do that in an effective model. There's an application step around unlearning. So that's something to be aware of as well. Page 14 is step 3. This is that relating step again. So into relating and relational storage, we have memory and filtering. We have discovering analogies and metaphors, creating meaning about what we already know and this new information, and then comparing and contrasting. What have we learned in the past? How does that compare and contrast with what we're learning now? to create some relationships with that information. Now, step 4 is a little more complex. When it comes to understanding, retrieval and understanding are inclusive of long-term memory triggers, creating connections and links, accessing, creating new triggers, and designing thinking, and then extrapolation and problem-solving ability. Once all of this has happened and we understand something and we've gone through this learning process, there is a hidden step, if you will, that's about reinforcement with self-talk. What happens here is once we've gone through the learning cycle, we either self-talk about it in a positive way or in a negative way. A positive way indicates that we have understanding and that we believe it will be meaningful for us. A negative way could mean that we are not committed to the learning long term, or we have some confusion, or we need some more clarity. One or both of those things can lead to some sort of action. If we have a negative self-talk response, we'll have to repeat the learning cycle again. Now, luckily, the learning cycle happens very quickly for most of us. We can go through this in a series of a few seconds in some case to clarify what we need to know, to clear up any confusion and be able to move forward. If we have positive self-talk and reflection, much more likely to take action and create some sort of deployment of this information in our world. As I said, if the information is complex or confusing, we may have to revisit some of these prior pieces of the learning cycle. Most of the time, though, once we've decided that this information is meaningful, we've had a solid experience, and we feel we understand, we can move forward with action. Page 16 of the assessment shows the full learning cycle. And I know this is very difficult to see on a screen, but it does have all 4 steps. So step 1 is over here, step 2 down here, step 3 over here, and step 4 with that self-reflection piece. So you can see each of the steps color-coded with the key up here, and you can see how they all come together to be the effective learning cycle. Then the last pieces of this assessment are the applications. So how can we put this all together to facilitate learning transfer for us? Again, there's some information here about how to make this as simple as possible, as well as ways to change learning and unlearn things that may affect our ability to process new information. We also have a contract here. This contract asks you to consider all the different things you've learned about your learning style at this point and look at how can I be more effective in reaching my personal learning goals. And then we've got our other assessment offerings at the end of our assessment here, just as we do with the rest of our report. So in a very high-level overview and a very quick one, this is everything that's involved in our learning styles assessment report. Tony, do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions right now.
Yeah. None yet. None yet.
Wow, either I'm that
we may
good
get
or
some.
it's just a quick overview.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. And Angie, if you can turn the screen over to me, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, just 1 second. You should be good to go.
There we go. Okay. So let me show you something that Jennifer created, and she does this for all of our assessments, and it's the Learning Styles Report Debrief Guide. Now, you know, as you're listening to this as a coach, I have to tell you, this report is very, very good. It's a real eye-opener for people you're coaching that will help them actually learn better. Once you understand what your learning style is, it helps you learn better. So, you know, we went through all of this pretty quickly. So what Jennifer did is she created this debrief guide. And this is a debrief guide that I'll show you where it is in a second. But here's the table of contents, and it walks you through how to debrief a learning styles report with your clients. And all the things that Jennifer was telling you is basically in this debrief guide. So it tells you everything you should be doing with your client as you're debriefing this report. Now, where do you find this? So let's look at where you find it. And you find it, believe it or not, since we were on this call, Brandon, our CEO, actually added the Learning Styles trainer materials in here. So notice every one of these has a password. So this is LS Training, okay? So let's click on this. This is already in your account when you log in. So let's click on it. We get this. So let's do a password, LS Learning, invalid. Let me go back and see, did I spell something wrong? Let's go back here. Oh, LS Training, excuse me. There we go. There's my learning style disability. Training. And there we go. So here's the beauty. On every one of our core assessments, Jennifer is building this entire trainer material site, and we have it for 4 of our core assessments. So here's quick links. So if we want to go to presentation materials, we just click on this, and here's presentation materials. If we want to go to debrief resources, here we are, debrief resource. Here's the learning materials. So she's created a PowerPoint presentation for you to actually do a 2-hour workshop and the 2-hour facilitator guide. This is a step-by-step guide telling you how to actually do the 2-hour workshop. What I really like about what Jennifer does with the PowerPoints, let's see how this works. Let's download this. I've now downloaded it. Here we go, PowerPoint presentation. Let me just show you what Jennifer does with all of these. For every slide, she actually puts a commentary about what to discuss or what to say when you're on that slide. I know this slide looks kind of crazy, but what it is, it's a build. So let me show you what I mean by a build. So if I click on the full slideshow, what you will see is it builds like this, all right? So that's what you get there. But again, she has explanations down here of what you might say or how to elaborate on that slide. So, you know, we have the slide presentation. It looks like it's 14 slides. It goes through all the key things. Here she has the average scores for learning styles. So there's a whole bunch of great materials in here. Here's some background material if you want to go in to learn a little bit more about learning styles beyond just the PowerPoint presentation, facilitator's guide, the debrief guide. If you want to read a little bit more about it, here's 2 pieces of material. And as we come across more, we add it to this site. This rapid skill builder is quite good. You can go through this. This is in detail. It will give you much more information about all the things in learning styles, and it ties right into the report. It's really powerful material to go through. So we have all these learning materials for you, some group exercises. So anyway, that is that. Any questions so far? I'm going to log out of that.
Yes.
No questions?
Yep, we have a couple of questions.
Okay, good.
Okay, so does the learning style correlate with DISC plus motivators? How should we interpret incongruities?
Well, we haven't, we have a DISC and learning styles combination report. What we need to do is to tie that in a little bit more and make it more integrated. As I was looking at the report, so let me show you about the report. Learning styles, here's the report. I want to go to the brain. So let's go to the brain. I want to show you something. There's a whole concept some of you may be familiar with on the brain. Let me just, how do I pull this down? I don't want to do that. Just bear with me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to, there we go. Okay. So let me go back to the brain here. And some of you may be familiar that there is a concept created by Ned Herrmann, and it's he breaks the brain into 4 basic lobes here, and these 4 tie into the DISC. And if you read through here, you'll see, you know, which one leads more into a D, an I, an S, or a C. So if you look at this, this will help coordinate that. But this is one of the projects on our to-do list, Angie, whoever asked the question, that we, even though we have the DISC Learning Styles Report, which is right here, DISC and Learning Styles, it really is the DISC report followed by the Learning Styles Report. But what we need to do is have some sort of coordination, the sort of a segue of why do these 2 tie together. So right before this page, the introduction, we'll probably tie something in with Learning Styles and DISC.
Fantastic. And
we haven't done that yet.
Awesome. That was Dave Schoenbeck, by the way.
Okay, Dave, we will do that.
Awesome. And then a couple more. What's the best way to incorporate this learning along with the DISC for a client? So kind of what you've already spoken about. But
yeah, so if somebody's gone through DISC, again, I want to, you certainly can just have them do the Learning Styles assessment, or you can, if they haven't gone through DISC yet, do the DISC Learning Styles combination report right here. And again, we're going to try to tie it in to the brain right here, and 4 tie into the DISC. So
fantastic. And one more. Early in Jen's presentation, she mentioned the percentages are based on others who have taken the assessment previously. Are those percentages now static, or do they continue to change as more participants take the assessments?
Well, right now, what you're seeing is static based on a fairly large number of people. If you go into the gentleman who did this, Dr. John Warner, he's the creator of this, took this based on a whole bunch of research. So right now the numbers are static. We do have some assessments that literally change the norm person by person, but that's not the case with this. So those are static norms right now. If, in fact, in the future we see that it changes, we will update it.
Fantastic. That's all I have for right now.
Okay. So I showed you the Learning Style Report. This one here is the combination report. I showed you that. Okay, the DISC Learning Styles. So what I want to do is, if we have no more questions, I want to show you that we have, I kept mentioning core assessments. What do I mean by the core assessments? So if you go to our website, which is assessments24by7.com, all right? And what I did is I went to assessments up here, and I clicked on core assessments, which brought me to this page, core assessments. So we have 5 core assessments. We have the DISC assessment right here. That's our by far most popular assessment. We then have motivators, which is the second most popular. We have the Hartmann Value Profile, which is, you know, sort of still under construction. We have something that should come out within the next 30 days, and it's going to be using the Hartmann Value Profile, and it will be thinking style. What is your thinking style, the way you make decisions? I will tell you that we are almost done with the report. I think Jennifer is doing a couple of reorganizations of the way the material is flowing, but it's all done. So we should have that up and running within 30 days. Everybody's familiar with emotional intelligence and, of course, learning styles. Those are the 5 core assessments. Learning styles, emotional intelligence, which I believe we're going to do next month on our webinar. We'll get to that in a sec. Our Hartmann Value Profile, which will be, I know we've had at least 1 or 2 webinars on Hartmann Value Profile, but we will have another one. And then motivators, which Jen did last month, and then DISC. So those are the core assessments. So I just want to reiterate, we either have developed or we're in the process of developing optional low-cost certifications for each of the 5 core assessments. Again, if you go to our main website here and under accounts, look at certification options. If you click on this, this is what you will see. You'll come to the training and certification. Now, the first one is DISC, as you can see it here, DISC. So if you click on this, I'm going to, won't close. Let's go down a little. If you want to learn about some of the others, we actually have a fully functioning motivator certification, and several people have gone through that. So this will tell you a little bit about what the motivators. Here's a picture of Jen, smiling Jen, who you just heard from. So she does the motivator certification. And we are creating certifications for emotional intelligence, and we will have one for learning styles, and eventually for the Hartmann Value Profile. So these are the certifications. Each of the certification programs, each is designed with the understanding that you're pretty busy already with your clients. So the programs that we've created are very flexible and pretty much allow you to work at your own pace. Now, as I said, Jennifer is our senior trainer, and she will work with you one-on-one from start to finish. And each core assessment certification includes taking the assessment yourself and receiving your own one-on-one personal debrief conducted by Jennifer. Those usually last at the very, very minimum 60 minutes, more likely around 90 minutes, because it's not just debriefing your assessments for you, but Jennifer's really, through this debrief of your assessment, also showing you how to do it with other people, just like we heard Andrew Cousins say that he did one today successfully. So each core assessment certification includes 10 complementary assessments that you can resell to your clients, effectively offsetting your investment in the certification. So remember that certification provides you with a tremendous number of different advantages, including the ability to charge more for your client debriefs, and the 10 assessments with accompanying debriefs more than offset your cost of certification. So the learning style certification will be available, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, as early as September 1. And for more information, just email us at support@assessments.ws, and we'll get you some information. Now, as for our webinars, this is our webinar page. And again, if I can go back to our main site here, under About, here is webinars. So all of our webinars are here. So you can see what our next webinars are going to be. And so we just did, as we did today, Understanding the Learning Styles Assessment. Next month, it's going to be Understanding the Emotional Intelligence Assessment. And again, Jennifer, just so that you know, we'll probably have you doing something very similar to what you did today with me. And we'll do that together. So this is the webinars page if you want to go back and see different webinars. Now, let me, Angie, any further questions?
Would help if I take myself off mute. Yeah, I'm talking away. Yes, are there special pricing for action coaches?
Yes, we do have special pricing for action coaches. You can email support@assessments.ws or just email Matt at assessments24by7.com and we'll get you the information. We always have special pricing for our action coaches.
Yeah, there's always. And how from Michael Dill, how do I get to the Platinum Rule page again?
Now, the Platinum Rule assessment page, you go under Assessments, go to 360, and there's Platinum Rule and Social Styles. Now, some people ask me, what's the difference? Why would somebody do a Platinum Rule or Social Styles versus, let's say, a DISC assessment? Well, the Platinum Rule and Social Styles, which are very, very similar, I will tell you that we've updated Social Styles a bit more than we have Platinum Rule at this point. We have something called the Social Styles Plus. So it is a 360-degree assessment. So when you take the Social Styles, or Platinum Rule basically, but let me just talk about Social Styles, the end user, the participant, takes the assessment, they get another link that they send out to as many people as they want within their own email system and ask them to answer the same. There's 18 questions. They ask their raters or observers, we call them, to answer the same questions about how those people see the participant. And what you get is a very interesting grid where you see where you saw yourself and where everybody else saw you. And with the Social Styles Plus, we actually break each page into two. On the left-hand side, we have your report as you saw yourself. And on the right-hand side of the page, we have where the average, the composite of all the raters or observers saw you. So you can see how you saw yourself and how everybody else saw you. It also includes the Social Styles Plus. It includes an adaptability portion, 20 questions that measures your level of adaptability. And adaptability consists of both versatility, which is your ability to change, and your flexibility, which is your willingness to change. So, but anyway, here's how you get to both Platinum Rule and Social Styles with sample reports, etc. Any other questions, Angie?
I do not see any.
Okay, so let me pose three questions to you, basically. So I know that everybody who's still with us is here to hopefully win 5 learning styles assessments. A winner is going to be selected at random and immediately afterwards and given the 5 assessments. And we'll tell everybody else who won the 5 learning styles at next month's webinar, just like we did this month. And we said Dave Schoenbeck won the 5 motivators. All we need you to do is to email our team. And again, support at assessments, that's plural, .ws. The .ws stands for website. Support at assessments.ws. And all we want you to do is email us immediately after this with your responses to these 3 questions. Here's the 3 questions. You might want to jot this down if you're going to email us. What was the single best idea that you took away from this webinar? That's question number 1. What was the single best idea that you got from this webinar? Number 2, what do you wish we would have covered or spent more time on? Would have covered that we didn't cover or spent more time on that we didn't spend enough time on? And then third, what other topics would you like to see us do a webinar on? So let me repeat those 3. What was the single best idea you got from today's webinar? Number 1. Number 2, what do you wish we had covered that we didn't? Or what do you wish we spent more time on in this webinar, but we didn't spend enough time for you? And then number 3, this is more general, what other topics would you like to see us do a webinar on besides next month's emotional intelligence? So Angie, if there are no more questions, I'm going to turn this back to you to bring it to a close.
I don't see any more questions at this moment, so we'll go ahead and close. So thanks to everyone for being on the call today. You guys know how to watch the webinar replay. Just go into all the action coaches, go into the dashboard, webinars, webinar replays. For those who are with Dr. Tony Alessandra, the team will send out the recording and everything for you guys to watch on their platform. So thank you, Jennifer. I look forward to having you at our team building next Friday. So I'm excited to have the 24/7 team come to the office and train our global team. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you for Dr. Tony Alessandra for making things happen. So thank you for doing this every single month. So
yeah, Angie, just one last thing. If you look at our main page here, I just want to remind people about our users conference on October 6th and 7th in San Diego. And I can tell you we have tracked people 6 months prior to coming to the conference and 6 months after coming to the conference. And we see that their assessment usage really, really skyrockets. And if you want to learn more about the conference, you can click here, or you can even go into about our users conference. We have some incredible speakers this year, not just on assessments, but on business in general. And here's the schedule for day one. I have some very powerful professional speakers coming in, screen-to-screen coaching and selling with Doug DeVitre. We have Pete Johnson, who's going to do strategic execution. And Bonnie. Bonnie is a master certifier of DISC, and she's going to do 90 minutes on DISC individual and team exercises. That should be really good. And then on Friday, we have Don Hudson, who is a Hall of Fame National Speakers Association speaker, talking about how to sell value, not just the price. Steve Sisler, our great DISC motivators whisperer, who's going to do, again, integrating the DISC and motivators, how to read it. Tony Parinello, again, a high-powered international speaker who's going to talk about selling to Vito. Now, that's not just selling to Italians. That's selling to the very important top officer, getting around the gatekeeper. Jennifer's going to do some stuff. Brandon's going to do a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit. So take a look at our conference. I really, really think you're going to love it. Everybody who's gone to these conferences speaks incredibly highly of it. So that's all I have.
fantastic, and ditto for that. I know the action coaches who have gone to the conference have won awards, so thank you for that. So, okay, fantastic. And Michael Dill had said he attended last year and it was very helpful. So those of you who haven't been to the conference, please attend. Other than that, that's a wrap for this month. Look forward to next month for the call. Thank you, Dr. Tony Alessandra, and thank you, Jennifer, for being on the call. So that's it for now. You guys know how to rewatch and replay, and until next month. Bye for now.
Goodbye.